He thought she'd fold. That was his first mistake, and it wouldn't be his last. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who was supposed to love you, someone who looked at your kindness and mistook it for weakness, you need to hear this story. Because what happened next isn't just satisfying, it's a masterclass in exactly how narcissists miscalculate every single time with the people they think they've broken. Let's call her Elena. Not her real name, but her real story. And by the end of this, you're going to understand something about narcissistic collapse that most people never see coming, including, ironically, the narcissist himself. Here's where it starts. Elena met Daniel at a mutual friend's dinner party. He was magnetic, charming in that effortless way that makes a room lean toward him. He complimented her mind before he complimented her face. And if you know anything about how narcissists hunt, you know that's not romance. That's reconnaissance. He was finding out what she valued most about herself, so he'd know exactly what to praise and later exactly what to destroy. Within 3 weeks, he was telling her she was different from every other woman he'd dated. Within 6 weeks, he was talking about a future, a house, maybe kids someday. This is love bombing, and if you've experienced it, you know how disorienting it is, because it doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like finally being seen. But here's what nobody tells you about narcissists. The idealization phase isn't really about you. It's about establishing a baseline of trust they're going to spend the rest of the relationship exploiting. Elena didn't know that yet. She just knew she felt chosen for the first time in years. And then, slowly, so slowly she almost didn't notice, the ground started shifting. It started with small comments. "You're not going to wear that, are you?" said with a laugh, so it didn't sound cruel. Then it was, "I'm just saying, your friend Priya seems a lot more put together than you lately." Then it was silence. The cold, punishing kind, whenever she brought up something that mattered to her. A promotion she was excited about. A trip she wanted to take with her sister. He'd go quiet, look almost bored, and somehow she'd end up apologizing for bringing it up in the first place. This is the devaluation phase, and it is engineered, not accidental. Every narcissist runs some version of this playbook because it works. It works by keeping the target constantly recalibrating, constantly trying to get back to that first addictive high of being adored. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement, and it's the exact same mechanism that makes slot machines so addictive. You don't walk away when you're losing steadily. You walk away when you stop believing the next win is coming. And narcissists are experts at making sure you always believe the next win, the next "I love you," the next good day is just around the corner. Elena stayed for 2 years, not because she was foolish, not because she should have known better, which, by the way, is something I want you to strike from your vocabulary right now if you've ever been in a relationship like this. She stayed because the system was built to keep her staying. She stayed because somewhere in year 1, Daniel had quietly isolated her. Not with a dramatic ultimatum, but with 1,000 tiny comments about how her friends didn't really get her, how her family was a lot, how it was just easier, wasn't it, to spend time with him instead. By year 2, her world had narrowed to the size of him. And this is exactly where Daniel made his mistake. Because narcissists have a fatal blind spot, and it's this. They mistake compliance for character. They think that because someone has learned to stay quiet, to shrink, to accommodate, that this is who that person actually is. They don't understand that they're not looking at a person's true self. They're looking at a nervous system in survival mode. And survival mode, by definition, is temporary. Daniel started getting sloppy, the way they always do once they believe they've won. He stopped hiding the late-night phone conversations he'd claim were work. He started talking to Elena the way you'd talk to staff. dismissive, impatient, occasionally cruel in front of other people, then affectionate the second they were alone, like nothing had happened. He assumed her silence meant surrender. What he didn't know, what he could never have known, because narcissists are constitutionally incapable of imagining an inner life that isn't organized entirely around them, was that Elena had started writing things down. Not a diary, not at first, just notes, dates, things he'd said, a screenshot here, a screenshot there. She told herself she was doing it to keep track of what was real, because gaslighting does something insidious to your memory. It makes you doubt events you witnessed with your own eyes. So she started building an external record because she couldn't trust her internal one anymore. That's not weakness. I want you to sit with that for a second because so many people think documentation is paranoia or pettiness or not letting go. It's not any of those things. It's a trauma response to living with someone who rewrites reality in real time. And it is, whether Daniel understood it or not, the first act of a person quietly rebuilding her own power. By month 22, Elena had a folder, a real one, organized, time-stamped. Financial discrepancies she hadn't understood at the time but now recognized as a pattern. Messages from a woman named Kayla that Daniel had explained away as just a co-worker 18 months earlier. A voice memo she hadn't even meant to keep, recorded by accident, that captured him saying something about her to someone else that no one who claimed to love her should ever say. And still, on the surface, nothing had changed. She still made his coffee the way he liked it. She still laughed at the right moments at dinner with his colleagues. She still, when he snapped at her in the car, said, "You're right. I'm sorry," in the flat, practiced tone she'd perfected over 2 years. Daniel had no idea the woman sitting across from him at breakfast was no longer the woman he'd broken. He thought he was looking at compliance. He was actually looking at patience. This is the part of narcissistic abuse that almost nobody talks about because it doesn't fit the narrative we're used to. The narrative where the victim is only ever fragile, only ever helpless, only ever waiting to be rescued. What actually happens, more often than people admit, is quieter and considerably more dangerous for the narcissist. The target starts gathering evidence, gathering resources, gathering the version of herself that existed before him, piece by piece, in secret, behind a face that had learned, out of necessity, to give nothing away. Daniel's biggest mistake wasn't cheating. It wasn't the cruelty or the gaslighting or the isolation, although all of that mattered enormously to what came next. His biggest mistake was believing that a woman who had gone quiet had gone weak. He mistook her strategic silence for defeat. And in doing so, he handed her the one thing every narcissist accidentally gives their target if they underestimate them for long enough: time. Unwatched time. Time to plan. Because here's what was coming, and I promise you, when I tell you what Elena did over the following 6 weeks, what she'd actually been building toward this entire time, you are going to understand why narcissists like Daniel almost never see the ending coming until it's already happened to them. We're going to get into exactly what she did, step by step, the moment the mask fully came off, on both sides, right after this. 6 weeks. That's all it took for 2 years of careful compliance to become the most devastating exit Daniel never saw forming. The first thing Elena did, and this is the part I need you to really absorb, because it's the opposite of what movies and TV shows have trained us to expect, is that she didn't confront him. She didn't scream. She didn't throw the folder of evidence in his face and demand answers. Because confrontation, especially early confrontation, only tips off a narcissist that you know something. And the moment a narcissist knows you know something, he shifts from offense to damage control, hiding assets, rewriting the narrative, preemptively telling mutual friends that you've been acting unstable lately. Elena understood, somewhere instinctive and hard-won, that the element of surprise was the only real power she had left. So she protected it like her life depended on it. In some ways, it did. Instead, she made an appointment with a therapist who specialized in coercive control, not couples therapy, not communication skills, but individual therapy focused specifically on relationships defined by manipulation and psychological abuse. She told Daniel it was for stress. He liked that explanation. It fit his story of her as slightly fragile, slightly too sensitive, someone who needed managing. He had no idea he'd just handed her a professional ally who would spend the next month and a half helping her see, with total clarity, exactly what had been done to her and exactly what to do about it. Week 1, her therapist helped her understand something crucial. Narcissistic abuse isn't a series of isolated incidents. It's a system, and systems have structural weaknesses. Daniel's weakness, like almost every narcissist's, was his image. He needed to be seen as the reasonable one, the generous one, the good guy who'd been unlucky in love. His entire self-concept depended on an audience that believed that story. Elena realized that whatever she did next couldn't just remove her from his life. It had to survive contact with his version of events, because he would absolutely try to rewrite what happened the second he felt control slipping. So week 2, she started quietly reconnecting with the people he'd pushed out of her orbit. Not with drama, not with, "you won't believe what he's really like." Just small, low-stakes contact. A coffee with her sister. A text to Priya, the friend Daniel had once dismissed as a lot. She was rebuilding a support system brick by brick and doing it slowly enough that it looked to Daniel like nothing more than idle socializing. He was busy. He was distracted. He had, by this point, started seeing Kayla more openly, not admitting it, but caring less about hiding it, the way narcissists do once they believe they've fully secured their primary source. That carelessness was Elena's cover. Week 3 is when she talked to a lawyer. This is the part that surprises people, because Elena and Daniel weren't married. There was no divorce to file. But they did share a lease, a car loan he'd talked her into co-signing for his credit, and this is the detail that made her stomach drop when she finally laid it all out on a lawyer's desk. A small business account he'd opened using her social security number for tax purposes, which she'd trusted him with back when trusting him with things still felt natural. The lawyer looked at her financial exposure and said plainly, "You need to get your name off these before you do anything else. Before you leave, before you confront him, before anything." So that became the actual plan, not an emotional exit, a financial extraction, executed with the same coldness Daniel had used on her for 2 years, except this time the coldness was working in her favor. Week 4, she started moving money. Slowly. A little into a new account each week, amount small enough not to trigger his attention, because by now she knew exactly how closely he tracked their shared finances. Another thing she'd once mistaken for care, and now recognized as surveillance. She photographed documents. She backed up the folder, the messages, the voice memo, the financial records, in 3 separate places, because she'd read enough about narcissistic retaliation to know that devices sometimes go missing right when you need them most. And here's the thing that I think is the actual heart of this story. The part that goes beyond Elena and Daniel specifically. During all of this, she still had to perform normalcy. She still had to sit across from him at dinner. Still had to let him believe he was winning. Still had to absorb his comments. The little digs about her weight, about her moodiness, about how lucky she was that someone like him put up with someone like her, without flinching, without giving away that every single one of those comments was now being filed away as one more piece of evidence, one more reason, one more confirmation that she was doing the right thing. Do you understand how much that costs a person? To keep smiling at someone while you're quietly dismantling the trap they built around you? That's not weakness. That is one of the most psychologically demanding things a human being can do, and Elena did it for 6 straight weeks without a single crack showing. Week 5, the lawyer helped her draft a letter. Not emotional, not accusatory, just procedural. Removing her name from the lease effective the following month, and formally disputing the business account opened in her name without proper authorization. She had her sister's guest room ready. She'd already moved the essentials over in small batches, telling Daniel she was decluttering, which, again, fit so neatly into his narrative of her as a bit anxious, a bit obsessive, that he didn't ask a single follow-up question. Narcissists are, ironically, some of the easiest people to hide things from, because their attention is almost never actually on you. It's on themselves, and on how you make them look. Week 6. This is the part people wait for, and I'm not going to pretend it wasn't dramatic, because it was. Just not in the way Daniel expected. She didn't confront him at home. She didn't do it in private, where he had every advantage, where 2 years of conditioning made her body remember exactly how to fold under his particular brand of pressure. She did it at his cousin's engagement dinner, surrounded by the exact audience whose good opinion he'd built his entire identity around. Not with a scene, not with tears. She simply calmly, when he made one of his signature little jabs at her in front of the table, something about how she'd probably forget her own name if he didn't remind her. Set down her fork, looked at him, and said, "That's an interesting thing to say, considering the voice memo I have of you telling Kayla I'm basically furniture at this point. Want me to play it for everyone, or should we talk about the business account you opened in my name instead?" Silence. The kind of silence that has texture. Daniel's face did something Elena had never seen it do in 2 years. It lost control. Not anger. Not yet. Panic. Because in that instant, in front of the exact people whose admiration he needed like oxygen, he understood 2 things simultaneously: that she knew everything, and that she had chosen this moment, this audience, this precise angle of attack, specifically because she understood him better than he had ever understood her. He tried to recover. Of course he did. Narcissists always try to spin first, apologize never. He laughed, called it a joke, told the table she was being dramatic, reached for the exact script that had worked on her 100 times before. Except this time, it didn't land, because this time she wasn't reacting from inside the relationship's distorted gravity anymore. She'd already left, weeks earlier, in every way that mattered. Her body was just finishing the paperwork. She stood up, thanked his aunt for the lovely dinner, and left. Alone. Composed. 2 years of held breath released in one unhurried walk to her car. What happened over the following months is almost anticlimactic compared to that dinner, and honestly, that's the point. The lease transferred cleanly because she'd already done the legal groundwork. The business account got frozen pending investigation once she filed the identity theft dispute, which put Daniel in a financial and legal headache entirely of his own making, because he was the one who'd opened it without proper consent in the first place. Kayla, it turned out, had no idea Elena existed at all. Daniel had told her he was practically already broken up. And when she found out the truth, she left too, taking with her the last audience Daniel had left who still believed his version of events. Within a year, mutual friends had quietly drifted from Team Daniel to simply not choosing sides at all, because the math no longer worked in his favor once the full picture came out. The account, the messages, the pattern that Elena, with characteristic precision, had made sure landed in exactly the right hands at exactly the right time. Here's what I want you to take from Elena's story, because it's bigger than her and it's bigger than Daniel. Narcissists build their entire strategy on a single, arrogant miscalculation. They believe that once someone stops fighting back out loud, the fight is over. They cannot imagine, because their whole psychology is organized around dominance and control, that quiet can be a strategy instead of a surrender, that someone can smile at you every morning while building, brick by brick, the exit you never saw coming. If you're in the quiet phase right now, if you're the one gathering, documenting, waiting, I want you to know that it is not weakness, and it is not doing enough. It is, very often, the most powerful thing you will ever do. And if you've already had your version of that dinner table moment, the moment the mask came off in front of everyone, I would genuinely love to hear about it, because these stories matter. They help other people recognize their own situation faster than they otherwise would have. If this resonated with you, subscribe to Mind Horizon, because we go deep into exactly this kind of psychology every week, the real mechanics of narcissistic manipulation, and more importantly, exactly how people take their power back. I'll see you in the next one.